I mean, I don't... If you know what to expect, then 4 times, then it's kind of like over. Go away. I don't know.
This clip of Felix Schellberg, or as he's known online, PewDiePie, shows his initial reaction to the 4th Five Nights at Freddy's game. This clip went viral because of his controversial reaction, claiming that the Five Nights at Freddy's series no longer scared him, stating that the jump scares just got old. But what was the real reason, from a gameplay perspective, that he was no longer scared of this iconic horror series? Felix's initial reasoning for him being immune to said jump scare is because of repetition, basically saying if you know what to expect, after 4 times it loses its impact. But I am here to argue that his reaction has more to do with the gameplay of the FNAF series over time, and less about the repetition of jump scares. To show you what I mean, let me show you how the FNAF game systems have progressed over the years. Starting with the original, the player would progress through mostly trial and error to find the optimal strategy of checking on Foxy, then checking the doors, and repeating this till the night ended. The only problem being that in harder stages, you had a small chance of losing to Foxy or Golden Freddy no matter what you did. Now this system, which sometimes threw skill out the window, was met with some controversy, because as a player, the game just deciding when it wants you to die is kind of unfair. Scott Cawthon, the creator of the series, acknowledged this and made an unfailing optimal strategy in the sequel. And although it was hard to pull off, once mastered, nothing could harm you. With the 3rd installment of the series, the same system of trial and error until the unbeatable strategy was found was used for FNAF 3. Yet with the strategy being easier to pull off than previous games, Scott was bombarded with reviews calling the game far too easy. Anxious about the next release, Scott decided to try to reimagine the series in a grand finale by changing the core mechanics and the setting of the franchise. Yet whether aware of it or not, he remained trapped in the same overall design philosophy of trial and error until the inevitable optimal strategy. Surprisingly, instead of being called easy, this game was met with reviews saying the series just wasn't scary anymore. And aware of it or not, most of those players' sense of fear was just now replaced with boredom from repeating the same tactic of getting jump scared to learn information, then figuring out the optimal strategy. And as PewDiePie said, if you know what to expect after 4 times, it loses its impact. Scott, hearing about this, decided that this was not a good finale for his series, and went on to create the 5th installment, Sister Location, in which he changed everything except the story. And although the game had a good narrative, he clearly did not know what he was doing with the gameplay. By having each day consist of various unrelated mini-games, instead of a concept that is developed over time, Sister Location's gameplay lacked any depth. Scott, receiving this criticism, and that of the past games, made a free extra mode for Sister Location called the Custom Night, which kept the gameplay of the first 4 games with one key difference. It told you what each enemy did on the beginning screen, thus eliminating the trial and error aspect from before. And it just became, well, repetition of another optimal strategy. At this point, I believe Scott realized what was growing repetitive with his games. Not the jump scares, the stories, or location, but the overall, optimal, unfailing strategy. The problem with it being that when you have a strategy that doesn't fail, you know exactly what will happen, eliminating any fear of the unknown. With this new knowledge, Scott developed the supposed final entry in the series, Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator. Now, I have a whole video analyzing all of this game's phases and how they work together, but what I want to focus on now is the defense phase, where, unlike previous entries in the series, there is no optimal strategy. In fact, the gameplay consists of choosing what to do in each randomly generated scenario. And although that may mean an animatronic starts here instead of here, it will still affect what you decide to do. What I'm getting at is in this final installment, there is no longer one optimal strategy. Rather, for a given situation, there are multiple that can work, but the randomly generated elements keep you from using a strategy over and over. For example, you can try to distract two animatronics with your audio device and try to keep the other two distracted with your flashlight, but according to Scott himself, the audio device may not always work. Same with shutting off your equipment. It only keeps an animatronic from getting in 90% of the time. With this philosophy of having multiple systems that have a high chance of working, yet at sometimes won't, you cannot guarantee that using the same strategy over and over will ensure you victory. On top of this, you won't always know what your enemy is doing. And isn't that what fear is? Not knowing enough information to be safe? And that is why I think the first entry in the series is also quite terrifying. Because in only these two games, you don't have any way to guarantee victory. With the difference between the two being, in the first, you had one strategy that may or may not work, and in the last, you have several constantly changing strategies that may or may not work. Having no way of guaranteeing your plan will work, I believe, is the key to designing a good horror game. By the way, if you want to hear me talk more about Pizzeria Simulator's design, I made a video just about that if you click right here. If you've already seen that, then consider clicking my logo here to subscribe to my channel and be notified of my upcoming analysis of Undertale, Cuphead, and Bendy and the Ink Machine, on my quest to finally answer the question of why they are so popular. Regardless of your choice, have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you all next time.